Hello everyone, welcome to today's show. My name is Spencer Walsh. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We got a lot of stuff to get into on today's show. Texts are showing that Brett Kavanaugh tried to cover his ass before the Deborah Ramirez allegations. Then he lied about it. Trump also says Brett Kavanaugh had a drinking problem in his youth. Not very good for him to say, probably. We'll take a look at that. The White House is telling the FBI to interview anyone necessary now for the Kavanaugh inquiry after trying to limit it. Trump is attacking female journalists and spreading conspiracy theories, or he did yesterday in a wild press conference that was not very appealing to watch or very scary after all. And finally, the DNC chair Tom Perez is giving the thumbs up to any Democrat who might want to vote for Brett Kavanaugh, and Duncan Hunter attacks his is attacking his opponent now for just being plain old Muslim, which is a little disturbing. Okay. Yeah, so during a Senate hearing with Senate Judiciary Committee last Thursday, Senate Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh claimed that the first time he'd heard of the allegations that he exposed himself to a Yale classmate, Deborah Ramirez, was the same way everyone else did in the September 23rd article in the New Yorker. But according to a new series of text messages obtained by NBC News, that may not be true. In fact, the messages allege that the publication of the New Yorker piece, Kavanaugh and his team have already been working here to refute and suppress Ramirez's story. So, it looks like at this point, there really was almost a concentrated effort and really an attempt that they did to just try and keep things out and keep things less public. So that's what we're finding out now, that there was this kind of an attempt here by Brett Kavanaugh to try and cover this up, and it's all supposedly because of text messages here. So NBC Scoop is relying on a message between a Yale classmate of Kavanaugh's, Carrie Burcham, and her friend Karen Yara Savage. So, they're already apparently trying to suppress this story, and according to NBC, the text between Burcham and Karen Yara Savage, both friends of Kavanaugh, suggests that the nominee was personally talking with former classmates about the Ramirez story in advance of this New Yorker article. So he was like, yeah, guys, we got a little bit of a problem here. This is something that's just not going to work, and I could be facing this here for my Supreme Court proceedings. And I mean, we already have this stuff from Christine coming out, and I'm going to have to deal with this too. It's not very good at all. What's going to happen to me here if this comes out? And I'm very worried. So, please help me with this, guys. And he was kind of anticipating how it would work. So, Yara Savage and Burcham are talking about this with Kavanaugh. In one message, Yara Savage said Kavanaugh asked her to go on the record in his defense. Two other messages show communication between Kavanaugh's team and former classmates in advance of the story. Further down, there is some more detail to what was actually in the message, including a reference to a wedding party photo that Kavanaugh appears in with Ramirez that was taken 10 years after their graduation from Yale. So here's the thing. Yara Savage was the bride. It was Yara Savage's wedding. Ramirez was one of the bridesmaids, and she also picked Kavanaugh as a groomsman. So it's very, very, she obviously held on to these relationships after she left the school. And so she does maintain some of a bit of a relationship with Kavanaugh. So in a series of texts before the publication, this is important to keep in mind here, of the New Yorker story, Yara Savage wrote a series of texts that she had been in contact with Brett's guy, and also apparently Brett, who wanted her to go on the record to refute Ramirez. According to Burcham, Yara Savage also told a friend that she had a copy of the wedding party photo to Kavanaugh, writing in a text, "I'd sent it to Brett's team as well." And also saying, what's more, Burcham told NBC and the FBI in a memo she sent it about the text that the ass covering process may have started maybe as far back as July. So this is possibly going way back. Like, they knew about this, and maybe there's some text messages that we don't know, and they could have been talking about how they can cover their ass against Christine Blasey Ford and her allegations. I think that's a very interesting possibility that very well could have happened there. If they had this process of mind coming through to each and every allegation like this. So it's very possible, and I think that's something the FBI may want to dig into. Now that they have this new investigative power that we'll get to a little bit later in today's newsflash. So according to the information Bertram provided, Ramirez tried to avoid Kavanaugh at the wedding of their two friends, Yara Savage and Kevin Genda. Ramirez clung to me at the wedding. Bertram wrote to Yara Savage in September 24th message. She said she never went near them, a reference to Kavanaugh and his friends. Even in the group photo, Bertram wrote Ramirez was trying to keep away from Kavanaugh, which shows you, I mean, she wouldn't just be doing that for no reason. I think this is definitely something that corroborates her allegations in a big way with this new report here from NBC News. And obviously that text, if they're there, if NBC News has their reporting right, I think it would be a very, very interesting situation to have these reported out. So yeah, according to NBC, Bertram has tried to repeatedly get the text messages to the FBI, at one point emailing them to a special agent involved in the ongoing Ramirez allegations. So yeah, it looks like they very much do exist. And the FBI is currently engaged in a 1-week extension of Kavanaugh's original background check, which is shoehorned in the 11th hour by Jeff Flake, pretty much attempting to cover his own ass and have it both ways. So yeah, but it remains to be seen whether Chad Ludington or Bertram will be interviewed during the investigation. So people, like for example, Chad Ludington, he was one of the people who came out and said, yeah, Kavanaugh was a belligerent drunk in high school, and I believe he was just talking about college, but still, it was it's a big step. It's definitely a big step there in the right direction, which is very encouraging, to say the least. All right, so yeah, we are going to now move on and discuss some more stuff. So, President Donald Trump is a brother of an alcoholic. So he told reporters on Monday that it was his understanding that his nominee, the nominee for the Supreme Court, Brett Kavanaugh, had admitted during the Senate testimony that he had difficulty as a young man with drink. That's what he said. Yeah, so Trump explained last year that his older brother Fred never warned him never to drink. He also claimed that Kavanaugh had been clear that in the fact that he drank a lot in high school and college. So if that's Trump's interpretation, I mean, I think we're all free to interpret it that way. I don't know. Yeah, so, and I mean, I was interpreting it that way before I said anything, but still, it's interesting to have that. But yeah, so this is, again, part of this press conference that we'll get to we'll get to a little bit in fuller detail later. But yeah, so here's what Trump said on watching Judge Kavanaugh testify.
But I never drank, okay? But I can tell you, I watched that hearing, and I watched a man saying that he did have difficulty as a young man with drink. The one question I didn't ask is, how about the last 20 years? Have you had difficulty the last 20 years? Because nobody said anything bad about him in many, many years. They go back to high school. You know, I graduated from high school, and I while I did not drink, I saw a lot of people drinking. They'd drink beer, and they'd go crazy, and, you know, they were in high school. They were 16, 17 years old, and I saw a lot of it. Does that mean that they can't do something that they want to do with their life? So it's a very tough thing. I really believe that he was very strong on the fact that he drank a lot, and so I don't know where there'd be big discrepancy.
Okay, so
yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's what he's saying there on that, which is a pretty big quote. But he's like, yeah, I think it was obvious he had a lot of problems drinking. I mean, I don't know if that's a thing you should probably say, but again, still. Kavanaugh really did make no such admissions during his heated testimony. He angrily rejected the suggestion that he may have sexually assaulted Christine Blasey Ford, or that he drunk belligerently in any time or period. So that's something that doesn't really fit with the story there. So still, though, the impact of what Trump thinks he heard Kavanaugh say and the president's own aversion to alcohol could be significant as he considers whether or not to draw the nomination. While Trump otherwise defended his nominee and suggested that what he took to be Kavanaugh's drinking problem was a thing of the past. No one had any reason to ask the judge, have you had any difficulty in the last 20 years? The president did seem to be leaving the door open to abandoning him. But, I mean, personally, there's reporting out here to prove this, that the testimony, it really made a big difference. Christine Blasey Ford's versus Kavanaugh's made a big difference with Donald Trump. He was actually pretty well impacted by it, which is interesting. So, so he says, certainly if they find something, I'm going to have to take that into consideration. Absolutely. I have a very open mind, which is very interesting. And yeah, it's something that I want to investigate here a little bit more. And yeah, so it seemed like he was really open to possibly getting this guy out of there, which, I mean, obviously, I don't think he would have much of a choice. Because if Kavanaugh comes out and there's something bad against him, he's going to have to get him out. There's no doubt about that. So yeah, at a White House event on opioid crisis last year, Trump had used the term difficulty as a euphemism for addiction and explained that his brother had, again, warned him never to drink because obviously his brother Fred, he died of alcoholism, and that kind of inspired Trump to never drink. And he just had some problems with it all his life, which I think it's a pretty good thing that he doesn't drink in that way. It's actually pretty impressive. So during the White House news conference, Trump seemed to be talking about Kavanaugh the way he had publicly he used publicly to defend staff members he had begun to sour on. So he was like, yeah, Mr. Bannon, he's a good dude. He's a very nice man. Very nice man. And then he's fired. Yeah, that's pretty much what he's going on. So that's what really had Trump officials nervous, because he was talking in ways that, according to Maggie Haberman, like, this is normally what it means. Like, you're not very long for the taking. So yeah, and the fact that Kavanaugh had a problem with it, I don't think Trump liked very much. All right, so yeah, speaking of this FBI inquiry here, the White House has authorized the FBI to expand its abbreviated investigation into the sexual misconduct allegations against Judge Brett Kavanaugh by interviewing anyone it deems necessary, as long as the review is finished by the end of the week, according to two people briefed on the matter. So yeah, an event at the White House Monday celebrating the new NAFTA, he made that remark that was like, you can interview anyone is good, you can always interview anyone. It's perfect. It's huge. It's great. Yeah, so yeah, the new directive came after the backlash from Democrats who criticized the White House for limiting the scope of the Bureau's investigation into Judge Kavanaugh, Trump's nominee for the Supreme Court. The FBI has already interviewed the four witnesses. Excuse me, it was originally asked to question, and on Monday, it reached out to others. The running inquiry produced an unusual spectacle as friends and classmates from Judge Kavanaugh provided dueling portraits of the nominee in his younger days as either a good-natured student incapable of the judge's behavior or stumbling drunk who could have easily blacked out and forgotten inappropriate behavior at these alcohol-soaked parties. And pretty much, I mean, honestly, I happen to believe the next people, but it'd be interesting to hear what kind of conclusion the FBI reaches, especially now with these text messages coming through that he's going to have to consider. So yeah, how far will the FBI delve into these allegations beyond the original high school sexual assault allegations lodged by Christine Blasey Ford remain unclear. 7 Democrats have sent the Bureau a list of 24 witnesses they insisted must be interviewed for the inquiry to be credible. So another accuser, Deborah Ramirez, all by the way, according to the New York Times, has given the Bureau the names of more than 20 people she said witnessed Judge Kavanaugh exposing himself during a college party or heard about it at some time or later, according to someone involved in the investigation. All right, so yeah, that's pretty much what he's saying. So pretty much Deborah